Once again, good evening, everybody. My name is Cassie Adjaman Dua, and I am the president of the University of Maryland Black Alumni Association. And on behalf of our board, I wanted to welcome everybody to Motivate Your Money. We're very excited about this first event in our series, um, our financial success series. And our guest this evening is Mac Gardner, not former, but Black Turf alumni. And so I'm going to turn it over to board member Bert Williams um, so that he can introduce our presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm excited to be able to introduce a very good friend of mine. His name is Mac Gardner. So I'll tell you a little bit about Mac so he can get started. Mac is a CFP, earned his degree in government and politics from University of Maryland in 1998. He has more than 20 years of experience in the financial service industry, specializing in investment management, retirement planning, and estate planning, as well as comprehensive wealth management. His previous experience includes management and vice president positions at industry-leading financial service firms, where he gained an expertise in insurance planning, banking, investment management, retirement planning, and trust administration. Currently, as the founder and chief education officer of FinLit Tech, he works to build a bridge between financial literacy and financial technology. He synthesizes the most complex financial strategies into a coherent, easily understood message to his clients. This ability to relate to his clients and set realistic expectations for them is what has moved many of his clients to consider Mac an integral financial resource in their lives. His passion for educating others led him to write and publish two books, Motivate Your Money in 2013 and The Four Money Bears, Financial Literacy Platform for Young Children in 2015. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mac Gardner.
Bert, everyone, thank you so much for allowing me to join this group. The University of Maryland holds a very, very dear place in my heart. Big brother Bert also is an amazing friend, and so when folks from my alumnus days and from my days back in mid-late 90s, oh my goodness, I feel old, Bert, I feel old. But when folks reach out and say, hey, Mac, we're starting a new series, we're talking about personal finances and financial literacy, that is something that is near and dear to my heart. So I graduated the University of Maryland in 1998, and I went almost directly into banking. And just a little bit of history about me. I started off in banking actually while I was still a student. Started retail banking and then moved my way into commercial lending for a number of years. Then I got a bunch of different licenses, securities licenses, 766, 24, all that fun stuff. And I really started focusing on wealth management. I did some time working with corporate retirement plans as well. So a majority of my career since 1996 has been working with dealing with the investment management space or the wealth management space. So the books that I wrote, I wanted to give a little bit of story behind the books. And then I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to go through that just highlights some of the pieces, some of the content from the book. So when I started my own practice in Houston, a majority of my clients were very wealthy, and it was actually quite surprising that they had accumulated a massive wealth, but there was a bunch of stuff about financial planning that they really weren't aware of, like the difference between term insurance and permanent insurance, 401ks, IRAs, just a bunch of stuff that I took for granted or advisors take for granted that folks didn't know. The rule of 72, how long it takes for money to double, the rule of 100 when it comes to portfolio asset allocation. So that's what Motivate Your Money was written to do. It was written to provide folks with a simple and easy to understand compilation of personal financial planning information. And as the practice grew, one of my clients came to me and said, hey, Mac, love what you did with the first book, but would you be open to maybe creating something for kids? The question is, okay, how young of a kids are we talking about here? And at that time, we both had elementary school children. So I took some of the elements from my first book, and we'll see in the PowerPoint presentation, and I published the second book called The Four Money Bears, which is a children's book that starts and introduces the financial literacy conversation early in a child's life. The target demographic for that book is actually elementary school kids age 5 to 11. And a big driver behind that and how that's contributed to a lot of success for the firm that I'm currently heading up now is that financial literacy just is not taught in schools. Sad, but true. And so if parents never got this guidance, how, no matter what color they are, how can they provide this guidance to their children? So we have been doing some really, really neat things with the For Money Bears book. We recently have been working with eMoney, one of the top fintech companies out there, to develop an app contest. That app contest went very, very well. And we have a lot of neat things that are in the works that helps to build a bridge between financial literacy and financial technology, which is what my firm FinLit Tech is all about. FinLit plus FinTech equals FinLit Tech. So that's just a big picture as to my background in this industry, in this business, why I wrote these books. One, to help adults, and then two, to help kids or to help parents with young kids really have a fun and entertaining way to start the conversation about managing money. So Bert, if we could jump into the PowerPoint presentation, that would be ideal. All right. So what I try to talk about here is having motivation money, yep, tips and tools for better money management. So what we're trying to talk about here, whenever I sit down with a client to talk about financial planning, it's important to really ask some important questions. Let's go to the next slide, please, Bert. All right. I know folks can see this, but having an honest conversation about money. Again, because financial literacy and money management isn't really taught in schools, we have a lot of situations, and I've seen this personally in working with folks and having these conversations about, doing a financial plan is, do you really know the true power and purpose behind your money? Have you ever looked at why you like doing what you do with your money? Do you believe that you have enough personal information about financial planning to reach your goals? Think about it. If you've never really been taught the basics of cash flow, the basics of the various types of financial tools that are out there, bank accounts, 401ks, 403bs, this hodgepodge of codes and different types of tools that are out there. If you've never really received that, a lot of times, someone just, you talk to somebody about it, or you talk to a coworker or a colleague, and they just gave you that information. The fourth bullet point is, do you honestly communicate with your financial plan? I'd even take a step back and ask how many folks actually have had a financial plan done for them or are working with a financial advisor or a certified financial planner. So again, before I start talking about the X's and O's and okay, this is the type of tool that you need to put X amount away into a 401k plan, X amount away into some sort of brokerage account or looking at assets and refinancing and all these things, I like to have some very honest conversations with people and just kind of get an idea and understanding as to their background to find out what your relationship with money is or has been. Because a lot of the financial decisions that we make are really tied to behaviors or habits or feelings that are attached with our process or how we've handled money in the past. Are you aware of what your money produces for you on a daily, weekly, or yearly basis? And then the last one is, do you respect your own ability to manage your finances to reach your financial goals? Financial planning, I like to say, is bringing the future into the present to do something about it today. That's really all financial planning is. But again, a lot of times it's helpful to have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of to give you that guidance. So that's why when Bert and Shmega came to me and said, "Hey, Mac, we're starting this financial planning series or this financial literacy series, wellness series," I was really, really excited because it gives me an opportunity to give some what I call Mac nuggets or some basic ideas about financial planning that you all don't necessarily need to run out and buy the book. If you do, great, thank you for the support, but can give you some basic tools, some different things to think about in your own financial life to be able to help you to reach your financial goals. Next slide, please, Bert. All right, what is your process? All right, here are a couple bullet points, a couple questions that I like to ask folks. What purpose does that financial asset serve in your life? So think about your own financial life right now. I oftentimes compare our finances to an attic. You get a job or you're working and you're putting money into a bank account, or you're putting money to a CD, or you may have some sort of retirement account, or you may have an annuity, or you may have some life insurance. So you've got all this sort of stuff in your life that accumulates over time. One of the first things that I do when I sit down with clients is I ask them to put a purpose to every financial asset you own, right? If you've got this checking account, tell me the purpose of that checking account. If you have this savings account, tell me the purpose of that savings account. Is it for the 3 to 6 months of emergency expenses that you can tap? All right, you have this CD. Tell me the purpose behind that CD. Is it to purchase another home? Is it to purchase a vacation? Tell me a little bit about this retirement account. Tell me a little bit about this non-qualified deferred compensation account. Tell me a little bit about all these things, because once we can sit down and identify the purpose to our financial assets, right, it makes the journey to the goal easier, because we can then look and find out if that asset is in the right place to reach that goal. This is a need, a want, a desire. I love that question. Their needs, their wants, and then their wishes, right? Was it something that you got because you needed it? Did you buy a term life insurance policy when you were in your early 30s because you needed to do it? Or was it something that someone said, "Hey, I think you should go do it"? Or did somebody sell you some stuff and you really weren't sure what the purpose served, but you want to make that person feel good? Did the financial solution meet your expectations? A lot of times folks will have these various financial assets in their life, but if you don't understand what the purpose is, it's really hard to find out if it's going to be meeting your expectations. Sometimes you do know what the purpose is, but the expectation has been met because the solution was presented to you and maybe even sold to you, as opposed to presented to you from a overall planning construct. Who suggested the product? Again, a lot of times we have folks in our families or close friends that we lean to for financial advice, but finding an impartial person to look at your overall plan. As a certified financial planner, I have to view the clients that I work with from a fiduciary standpoint. So my job is not to sell you something. My job is to provide you with a plan and then find the right solutions for that plan. So, finding out who suggested the product or solution is a very important aspect of it, because there may be other ways to get to the same solution that you have. What did the product or solution cost? There's only two things that we can control as mere mortals in our lives. And I tell this to my clients all the time. There are only two things we can control: the cost of the product or solution that we have, right? And the asset allocation, meaning, is this in cash? Is it in stocks? Is it in bonds? Is it in precious metal? Is it in real estate? So those are the only two things we can control as mere mortals, is the cost of the solution and the asset and the actual allocation. So be mindful of what these various solutions that you have in your life are costing you. Because if you're not getting the requisite benefit from that solution, you may be paying too much for it. So just being aware of that over time can be very important, impactful. How long have you owned it? I can't tell you how many times I sit down with clients, and we're doing we're sitting down and we're gathering a bunch of information, and they'll look at a statement like, "Wow, I didn't even realize I had this account for so long." They're like, "Yeah, you've had it for 10, 15, 20 years." you have to find a way to find out if that's doing what it needs to do. But realizing and looking at how long you've owned something can open your eyes to newer solutions that are out there, right? Or the fact that it may be repurposed. It may be something that no longer serves the purpose that it did 10, 15, 20 years ago. And now we have to look at, from a planning perspective, as how we can either repurpose that asset or use it in a different light. How'd you go about choosing the product or choosing the solution? What's your process for managing the account? That's another thing to ask yourself. So again, no matter what type of financial asset you have, it's important to have a process for managing it. It could be quarterly check-ins on your 401k. It could be semi-annual check-ins on your 401k or your investment portfolio. It could be real estate. So just having a process in place to manage the account is very important. And a lot of times a financial advisor or a CFP can help you with the process of making sure everything is moving in the right direction. But again, with technology and a lot of the information out there, there are neat tools that you can utilize to help you through the process. And then how do you determine the measure of success of the account? Is it based on the return that it's doing over the years? Is it based upon the fact that it's as volatile as the market? Is it the fact that it's doing what it needs to do and just staying put? So how do you determine or measure the success of the various accounts that you have in your life? Are good ways to just sort of, again, putting together a process and looking at all the things that you have in your life and saying, okay, what's the purpose of it? What's the process I have to determine that it's doing what it needs to do in my life? Right. The 3 F's of financial planning. All right, so as you're looking at this and you're looking at your overall personal financial picture, right? I like to talk about the 3 F's of financial planning. The first F is family. Family drives a large percentage of what it is that that we do on a daily basis. We get up, we go to work. We're taking care of our kids. We're taking care of our loved ones. We're taking care of extended family. So one of the things that we should definitely look at as we're looking at our overall picture is really sitting down and looking at who is being affected by the financial decisions that we make. I do an exercise. I call it the up, down, and around. What I'll do is I'll draw the pictures, 2 boxes of the husband and wife, or the spouses, the partners, and then I'll draw the pictures of the children if they have children. And then I'll ask a question. I'll say, hey, are mom and dad still alive? And then draw the pictures of mom and dad. And I do that to emphasize and show people that the financial decisions that may be happening at one level, right? If mom and dad get up there in age and they don't have the financial wherewithal to manage their finances, or some sort of long-term care situation comes up, the decisions that are made by the 2 people that are sitting in front of me could have a huge impact on not just the folks below them, on the kids, and maybe be able to pay for college or buy a home or do some of these things. But that sandwich generation may be financially responsible for mom and dad too. So we want to look at the family, our family picture, and look and see as to who is going to be affected by these various plans and these various things that we're doing. And if possible, potentially, plan for that as part of a subset of your own financial plan. So after we look at family and we look at all the different moving parts and all the people that are affected by the financial decisions that we make, the second thing we look at is, okay, the future. What does the future look like? And for some people, that's looking at 5 years from now. Some people, that's looking for 10 years from now. For some people, that's looking at 20 years from now. But we want to look at what are the goals that we want to try to accomplish, right? And write them out, like literally. Okay, I want to retire at 65. Great, wonderful. All right, once you're retired, what does life look like? Okay, life looks like this. I'm going to be spending X amount, and I want to be doing traveling and spending time with grandkids. Wonderful, that's great. Maybe short term, what do things look like? Well, I want to be able to pay off my house. Great. I want to be able to save X amount of money in a retirement account. Great. So taking all these different goals, what I call goals-based planning, that's wrapped up in the future. So once you've got the family and then you have the finances, have the future, then we look at the financial situation. And the financial situation is really the nitty gritty. that's when, you know, you can take a line down the middle and you can put your assets, your liabilities, or your balance sheet at the top, and then your income and expenses. And then once we have a picture of what your assets, liabilities look like, you know, your home, your car, your cash, those type of hard assets and liquid assets, and then your liabilities, you know, your mortgages, so on and so forth. Once we have that sort of basic information mapped out, we can then look at your expenses. Okay, here are your expenditures, here's your income, we look at there. And then once we have the sort of baseline of your financial plan, then we can determine one, if you're on track to reach those goals, right? And two, if we need to make modifications. What do we need to do more of? What do we need to do less of? How do we navigate your overall financial plan? So again, the 3 F's, I know it seems very basic, but and I really try to do that for folks who are reading the book or who I work with on a regular basis, is look at family, look at who's going to be responsible or who's being affected by your financial decisions and the things that you're doing with the financial assets and in your life. Look to the future. What are the things that you want to get done? Because remember, all planning is bringing the future into the present to do something about it today, right? So write out those future goals and what it is that you want to try to get accomplished, right? And then look at your current financial situation, look at your assets, look at your liabilities, look at your income, look at your expenses. Right? And then once you have those things lined up, you can then, utilize software. There's a bunch of planning stuff that's out there, or you can reach out to an advisor, someone that helps with planning. But once you have those 3 important steps laid out, it's a lot easier to engage in the planning conversation if you do decide to work with a financial plan. Next slide, please. All right. So this is interesting. As I said before, I've worked with folks that have amassed, done very, very well, and they they didn't necessarily inherit a lot of money. When I was managing TIAA Crest Wealth Management Group in Houston, a lot of my clients were professors, college professors, and they never really. They never earned a lot in their early years, so they never spent a lot in their early years. And so what eventually happened is that their income really started to swell and get a lot larger, but they sort of stayed at this very stable expenditure. And I would just look and I would analyze all these financial plans. I have been fortunate and blessed to have presented over 4,000 financial plans over my years in this business. And I came up with what I call 5 steps to financial success. Step 1 is to plan accordingly. And when I say plan accordingly, I mean, look at what it is that you're trying to accomplish. If it's buying a home, if it's buying a car, if it's paying off debt, whatever it may be, right? Have a plan in place and plan according to whatever that goal is. The next step is to spend cautiously. Now, there's only 4 things you can do with money. And as you can see, steps 2 through 5 are those 4 things. And I intentionally put it in that stair-step structure so that you can see that you got to have the plan first, and that's the ground. The next one is spending cautiously, because if you don't spend cautiously, if you spend everything that you have, right, it's hard to then get to the next level, which is saving diligently. By saving diligently, meaning making it a part of what you do, making saving a part of your DNA. For those of you out there who like good books, there's a really good book out there called The Richest Man in Babylon. It talks about saving 10% of every dollar you've ever earned. And if you can do just that from dollar one, you will be amazed by the amount of money that you'll have over time. The next step 4, is to invest wisely. Typically, when we get to this segment, a lot of times investing and savings are 2 different things. You can save into accounts and just sort of save into a CD or a checking account. Or you can save into an IRA or brokerage account or some sort of 401k or 403b. But once you're doing in that space, then you're talking about investing, and investing includes risk. And so it's important when investing to invest wisely. And what I say there is sometimes just, there are a lot of day traders out there. And if you're a day trader, great, that's awesome. But you got to really focus on that. But just being aware that investing includes risk. And a lot of times it's helpful to have someone who is very knowledgeable of the investment space. Most certified financial planners are either accountants or are Series 7 licensed. or have a 66 to deal with registered investment advisory. So it can help to have a bit of guidance, because the investment space can be it can be perilous if you're not aware as to the various type of alternatives and options that are out there when it comes to investing your money. And then the last one up top is, once you've moved through the stair step and you spend cautiously, save diligently, invest wisely, then you get to that third one, which is to give generously. Certain folks, they do give generously, and they give consistently. They'll tithe through church. They'll give to not-for-profit organizations. So the idea here is, again, have a plan, all right? Spend cautiously, be aware of every dollar that comes in and out the house, save diligently, invest wisely, and then give generously. So those are my 5 steps to financial success. Interestingly enough, the 4 Money Bears book here, Spender Bear, Saver Bear, Investor Bear, and Giver Bear, it's based upon this graph and the 4 functions of money. And I talk to kids about this in the book as well. I think it's sort of the baseline of financial planning and money management, is to understand what the 4 functions of money are, and to make children aware of that at a very, very early age, so they don't just go spending all their money all the time, as a lot of our kids are prone to do. Go to the next one, please, Bert. All right, financial planning focus. All right, so this is a graph or a piece that I put together to show folks how a advisor, specifically a certified financial planner, if you are working with one, this may look familiar, but my role is to help my clients manage 5 things: their investments, their insurance, their retirement planning, their estate, and their taxes. As you are looking at this, if you are not working with an advisor, these are pretty much the 5 cornerstones of a financial plan. And most of the things, no matter if you are worth a few 100,000 or if you're worth a few 100 million, these are the things that you're going to really have to work with and manage as you go throughout your financial life cycle. So, the investments, we talked a little bit about that. That's looking at asset allocation. That's looking at the types of investments that you own: mutual funds, ETFs, individual stocks, individual bonds, munis, you name it. That can be a very complicated space, but working with an advisor or working with a CFP can definitely help you when it comes to understanding the investment side of it. On the insurance side, there's term insurance, there's permanent insurance. There's I get people call it whole life, which is just permanent insurance, but a quick primer: whole life is probably the most conservative type of life insurance, and there are not a lot of companies that utilize whole life anymore. It's universal life, index universal life, and then variable universal life. So understanding the type of insurance, not just on your life, but your home, property and casualty insurance, umbrella insurance. Work with a lot of clients right now who are taking care of aging parents. They have questions about long-term care insurance, disability insurance. So being able to look at all the different insurance solutions that you have and see how it all fits into the plan, it's very, very important for you to be able to monitor all that and have someone assist you with it. Estate, this is an area that it still blows my mind. Many of you know that Chadwick Boseman recently passed away, and he died intestate, which means he died without a will. And he was worth several millions of dollars, but he like most people, did not have any sort of written documentation in place that would say, hey, this is what happens in case I die unexpectedly. Having some sort of will in place, I think, is very, very important. That's something that we need to work on. Hey, I saw a message that popped up. What is the difference between the different types of life insurance? Sure. Okay. So if you can imagine, you draw a line down the middle, right? And you draw a T at the top. On one side of that T, you have term insurance, okay? And on the other side of that T, you have permanent insurance. Term insurance is what I refer to as almost renting a life insurance policy. You only renting it for a certain term, a certain amount of time, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. Now, with term insurance, you get you get a lot more death benefit or bang for buck. So you get a lot more of a bigger policy for a smaller dollar amount. But what you have to be aware of is as you get older, your cost of insurance goes up. So as you get older, the closer you get to that term, right, it's going to cost you more money if you try to get that same kind of coverage later on in life. Permanent insurance is exactly what it is. It's like owning the insurance. And as long as you keep paying that premium, you get that death benefit. So that's a different sort of difference between a term and a perm insurance. Retirement planning, that's a big one. That's where a lot of advisors really are helping their clients, and a lot of people are helping folks when it comes to planning for that stage of their life. Here's why. 50 years ago, the average retirement age was 65. Average life expectancy 50 years ago was 70. So if you think about it, pretty much all you needed was a pension, because you sat down on the front porch and you drank lemonade and you just, you retired at 65 and you were dead in 5 years. Fast forward to today, average retirement age is still in the mid 60s. Life expectancy, folks, though, is 85. So as you're looking at retirement planning, if you no longer have a pension, if you are someone that's having to deal with this themselves, like a lot of folks are, you have to answer 3 very important questions when it comes to managing this pot of money that should get you to retirement. 1, how much do I put away? 2, how do I manage it? And 3, if I'm lucky to have this pot of money by the time I'm retired, how do I make this money last a lifetime? So the retirement aspect of it is something that a lot of folks have questions about, and it's getting a lot of attention from the advisory world and from the technology world as well, to answer some very important questions and to help people manage their overall personal finances. On the taxes side, I am not a CPA, but there's a tax ramification to pretty much every type of financial transaction that goes down. You take money out of one pot to put in another. When you liquidate an IRA, you liquidate a 401k, you liquidate a life insurance, you liquidate an annuity, Roth IRAs versus traditional IRAs, municipal bonds, everything in your financial life has some sort of tax ramification. So I tell people all the time, I don't manage taxes for people, but I am more than happy to share with you what the ramifications are if you're looking at tax harvesting for your non-qualified or your after-tax brokerage accounts or your after-tax mutual fund accounts. That's something that's you need to be aware of as you're going through the financial planning process, and a CFP can help you, or someone that specializes can assist in that space. All right, Bert, what do we got next? All right, the financial planning lifecycle. This is important because, me personally, I am in the asset accumulation phase of my life, kind of rounding the corner into asset preservation, but pretty much every person that you know is on this cycle. And depending on where you are in this cycle, there are going to be more things that are going to be more important to you than other times. So, the asset accumulation stage is when you're working and you're building up and you're putting money into some sort of account to reach some sort of goal, purchasing something, retirement, paying things off. So that's the asset accumulation phase. And then we get to the asset preservation. So, typically as you're building your nest egg, we look at, I look at your journey towards the goal and then your journey once you reach the goal, right? So if you're getting closer and closer to, say, retirement as your goal, and you're looking at another 5 years before you get there, 10 years before you get there, you may not necessarily be looking at asset accumulation. You may be looking to be like, okay, I'm trying to preserve these assets. I want to make sure these assets last as long as possible, so that if I need it, there's something there, or if a loved one needs, I pass away and the loved one needs it, there's something there, or something for my kids. And then you'll start turning that corner and you get to what I call distribution during life, right? So this is sort of entering your retirement years. You could look at it that way. Retirement is different for different people now. Some people are retiring early, some people are retiring late, depending on what phase they're in. But at some point in time, you're going to start to look at your assets and the things that you've built up, maybe a home, maybe real estate, and look for providing income to distribute those assets, that income stream during life. And then you get to the point where, you know, you're looking at a distribution during death or at death. And that's when having things in line like a will is important. Really, really important, folks, for those of you who are listening, and have either life insurance policies or annuities or retirement accounts. Please, please, please make sure that you update the beneficiaries on your accounts. I cannot tell you how many times I've literally just seen horror stories. I'll share one with you now, and hopefully it really gets across to you why I stress the importance of this. I was working with a client when I was in Houston. The gentleman was a professor at Rice University and had spent many, many years there. He was gay, and he lived by himself for many, many years. He was a very dear friend, not just a client. I would, you know, reach out to Clyde, make sure everything was good. He was retiring, everything was sort of making sure everything was in place. And for a couple of weeks, I didn't hear from Clyde. Was notified by the lady that kind of took care of his home that Clyde had passed away. You know, after the tears, after the crushing blow, because I'd known Clyde for so many years, I get a phone call from his sister. They were going through his documents. They found a box. And in that box was a dated will, almost 15 years old. And in that will left 50% of his nearly $7 million estate to someone that he was dating 15 years ago. And we call that the laughing heir, because this person all of a sudden now, who is literally probably has no idea who Clyde is anymore, is now receiving millions of dollars because Clyde had a piece of paper, had a document that was dated. So, you know, Clyde may have thought in his head, hey, you know what, I've got something, and he really didn't. He had something, but it was dated. So that's an extreme measure. I can tell you stories about people who get married and then remarry, and then the former spouse is the beneficiary on some of their 401k. I saw another chat come in here and try to, addition to a will, what other documents you consider when estate planning? Okay, great question. A will is, okay, let's kind of look at it this way. It's something called probate, right? The probate process can be lengthy. If you do not have a will, all right, certain assets must go through the probate process. If you die intestate and you don't have a will that states, I want my stuff to go here, okay? Typically it's a home, typically it's bank accounts, things along those lines go through the probate process and require some sort of will. You could establish a trust. I've helped folks establish trust before, where you put all of your assets into a trust, right? The trust, upon the passing of either one person or two people, then drives and dictates who receives income and who receives what assets that are titled within the trust. So you could use a will, you could use a trust. Certain things avoid probate. 401k plans, IRAs, life insurance, those things do not go through probate because they are beneficiary driven. And that's why it's so important to have the correct beneficiary on these accounts. Make sure it's a loved one, make sure it's a current loved one. You know, if you have minor children, it's going to be important to have an adult, but someone who is not a minor listed, some sort of family member, to be able to provide for the financial well-being of those kids. So you can use a will, which is probably the easiest thing to do. You can, you know, reach out to an estate planning attorney and get a will drafted for a few $100s, especially if your estate is not very complex or complicated. But just aware, a lot of people have 401ks, a lot of people have IRAs, a lot of people have very important, for those of you who have bank accounts out there, there's something called a TOD, which stands for transfer on death. So you can set up a bank account or CD to be almost like an IRA, where you can put a TOD on there, so that can be a loved one on the account. So, but distribution at death is important because once you pass away, the things that are listed on those pieces of paper, they're going to move forward. And Your family members could fight it or contest it, but that's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time. So make sure you're going through all your financial stuff, and hopefully after this this webinar, it'll prompt you to just kind of look at your stuff and make sure you know who the beneficiaries are. Next one, Bert, please. All right, needs, wants, wishes. This is fairly simple, but it's going to be an important thing to think about while you're in the accumulation phase. But it's also going to be really important when you're looking at the decumulation phase. And I'm not sure how many folks on this call are getting close to that decumulation phase or spot. But here, when looking at this, I really like to break down to people like, look, once you are going through life, you got to be able to segment what are needs, what are wants, what are wishes. That helps you on the accumulation phase when it talks about the spending cautiously and saving diligently, so on and so forth. So, you know, as for as many plans that I have done with clients, the funniest part to me is when, okay, ask about your assets. Okay, I know what my assets are. Okay, home, car, okay, tell me about your expenses. Or tell me about your liabilities. Okay, there's a mortgage. I got some stuff on the car. There's some credit cards. Then you talk about your income. Okay, what's your income? Oh, okay, it's 150, 200, blah, blah, blah. That's what it is. And then we get to what are your expenses? And that's when people kind of like, I don't know, what comes in, and I know there's some money left over. So an exercise that I like to share with folks is that, you know what, for a week, take a piece of paper, take a notepad, take a pencil, and literally write down every time you spend money. It's an interesting exercise, but if you can do it, it'll open your eyes amazingly, because you're like, oh, I didn't realize I do this. I didn't realize I spend money. It's literally just write down everything for that week as to where your money's going. And then categorize them as needs, wants, or wishes, because that can not only help you while you're in this phase, maybe the accumulation phase, if that's where you are right now, to be able to maybe funnel discretionary income to retirement accounts or investment accounts or real estate or other things. But it can help you a lot once you get to the decumulation side. There's the accumulation side and retirement planning, and there's the decumulation side where you're going downhill. It can really help you on that side because, typically in retirement, you're working with anywhere between 70 to 80% of your income, and that's the goal. When you were working your working year. So if you can identify what those needs, those wants, those wishes are in your overall financial picture from an early stage, it will definitely help you once you get to that phase of your life to break down what the needs, wants, and wishes are, and every little bit helps once you get to that point where there's Social Security, there could be a pension, there could be other assets, but this is a great exercise, and try it. Try just writing stuff down and seeing what comes up. There we go. Sorry. Wishes and wants. Okay. So what's the difference between a wish and a want? Great question. The way I like to look at it is, so needs are your needs are food, right? So we need food. You need clothes on your back. Okay, wants. A want may be, okay, you know what? I want to be able to, put my child through school. I may want to be able to, get a new car in a couple of years, right? So that could be segmented as a want. And a wish, maybe, you know what? I wish at some point in time to maybe get a new Porsche, or the wish could be, a trip to Tahiti. So that's typically how I segment needs, wants, and wishes. Their needs are your the basic needs to maintain your lifestyle. And then wants are just a little bit above that, things that you maybe want to be able to do, and wishes are things that when we're planning, I like to be able to segment all these different things, because there may be, for one person maybe a want, for another person maybe a wish, but we want to be able to segment them so that we can get a priority in the plan as to what things that we need to either fund for or focus on as you're going through your financial planning and you're trying to reach those goals. So I hope that answers the question. All right, next page, please. All right, bucket approach to money management. This is a really important segment, and I hope you all can get some really good Mac nuggets out of this one. All right, so I cannot tell you how many times I've sat down with clients and we're looking at an account. I'll maybe look at a 401k account. Let's take an example, and we'll look at the 401k, and 70% of the 401k is in cash. And I'll look at them and I was like, okay, what's the purpose of this account? And they'll say, oh, it's for retirement. So, okay, if this is for retirement and you've got, let's just say 10, 15, 20 years to go before your retirement, why is everything in cash? And the response I usually get is, well, because it's safe. Okay, I understand. So the 3-bucket approach to money management talks about bucketing your goals, short, mid, and long, right? And then utilizing the proper tools for said goal. So if you have a short-term goal, money to buy a home, right? And you want to make sure that this $50,000 goes absolutely nowhere. Anything between 1 to 3 years, I would categorize as a short-term goal, because if you were to put that $50,000 in the market, it could go down to 30, depending on what market. It could theoretically go up to 70, but there's a lot of volatility and risk within a 3-year period. So for short-term goals, you want to use short-term tools. Cash, money market, CDs, those are the short-term tools that you want to use to fund those short-term goals. Now, midterm, 5 to 7 years, 5 to 10 years. Midterm goals are things that you want to sort of get accomplished during that time. You want to be able to take advantage of growth in your money over that 5 to 10 year period. Now, CDs and money markets are paying 1%. That's not a lot. Cost of living is moving up at 3 to 5%. So if you've got a goal that you need to reach this 5 to 7 years, you may want to look at things like municipal bonds or bond funds. Now, bonds are not created to get a whole lot of growth, but they can pay you a nice yield, right? And they're not very volatile, especially in this low interest rate environment. That's a good place to be. Long-term, a long-term goal may be retirement, maybe a child's college savings account, something along those lines. So if you're looking at a long-term goal and you have the years to invest, that is when you want to start looking at utilizing stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, because if you were to chop up the stock market, the S&P 500 over any 10-year period, it's returned about 9.7%. Chop it up, look at it, find out for any 10-year period. So if your goal is over 10 years, right, and it's for retirement, and you have your money sitting in a CD earning nothing, right, you may never reach that goal, or you could reach that goal but be very, very underfunded because the assets that were in that account weren't appropriated properly. So again, look at the goals that you have, whether they're short, they're mid, they're long, and then make sure that the tool that's being used to reach that goal or fund that goal, right, is the appropriate one. So short term, midterm, long term. Again, short term is 1 to 3 years. Midterm is, say, 3 to 5, 3 to 7, and long term can be 7+. And that's when you hear the bucket approach between mutual funds. What's the difference between mutual funds and ETFs? Great question. So here's another story I like to share. I'm a true believer that all we are at the end of our days is a collection of stories. Certain people are lucky to have a CPA, a CFP, or someone that deals with money management in their house to hear these stories. But sadly, a vast majority of folks aren't. So that's why, that's why I wrote these books, to try to get the word out. So if this was 1970 and you wanted to get some stock, stockbroker call you up, hey, Bert, what's going on, man? It's Mac. Hey, you want to buy some AT&T? And that broker would sell you some AT&T stock. That broker would make his money. Bert would have his AT&T stock. The broker would have whatever commission he made on doing that transaction, and then they moved on. And then came late 70s, early 80s, and money managers, trust companies said, hey, you know what? Let's create these baskets of stock or baskets of bonds. We can charge folks between 1% and 5%. They're called actively managed funds, and we'll try to beat the market. And that's how the mutual fund was created. So there are some great mutual fund companies out there. And if you want to go out there and find them, they're typically actively managed. So you're paying a premium for an actively managed pot or bucket of assets. But something interesting happened. If you were to look back the last 20 years of all the mutual funds that have been created, less than 5% actually beat their index. So then people started saying, okay, if I'm paying 2.5%, 3% for someone to manage my money, but they're not beating the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average or whatever the index is, why am I doing that? So the industry came out with something called an ETF, or exchange traded fund. An exchange traded fund is a passive investment, meaning it just follows an index, follows the Dow Jones Industrial Average, follows S&P 500, and instead of paying 2%, you're paying 0.2%, but you're just following that index. And typically over time, what we see is a passive approach can beat out an active approach. So that's really the difference between a mutual fund and an ETF. Mutual fund is active, you're typically paying more. And an ETF is passive, and usually cost a lot less. You can put together both in a portfolio. So hope that answers the question. All right, what do we got next, big brother Bert? Oh, what are the best long-term tools for someone beginning to actively manage their money? Great question. So I am a big fan of a lot of the technology that's out there today to allow people to invest small amounts of money or large amounts of money, but at low cost. You'll start to see that Schwab, TD Ameritrade, they're all being merged together nowadays. But Fidelity is another very, very big big provider of investment resources. And Fidelity actually has provides the ability to purchase funds and ETFs at no cost. So the best way to start off an investment portfolio, in my personal opinion, is make it a part of your process. You can literally go onto the Fidelity website right now and start taking $100 a month out of your account and doing an auto purchase into some sort of ETF or some sort of low cost mutual fund, S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average. That's where I would start if you're just looking to just get into the mix. You may have a 401k and it may be a target date fund where, if you're expected to retire in 2050 or whatever, and it manages the assets for you. But if you're looking to have something that's a non-qualified, so IRAs, 401ks are considered qualified money because they get special, they qualify for special IRS treatment. Non-qualified assets are things like a regular brokerage account that you can open at Fidelity and buy some ETFs or buy some mutual funds. So that could be your core way to start. And in fact, that lends or moves quite nicely into this chart right here about risk versus reward. So if we were looking at stocks, there'd be large cap stocks, there'd be mid cap stocks, and there's small cap. Large caps are your bellwethers, your Cokes, your Amazons, your GE. Those are large cap companies. Every large cap company was at some point a small cap company. Amazon started in someone's garage. Microsoft started in someone's garage 20, 30 years ago. They were small caps, and then they got bigger, and cap stands for capitalization. So depending on where you are, if you look at this graph, you see at the top right corner that says high risk, high reward. What I would put in that corner, in that segment, would be things like international stocks. I would put things like small cap stocks, because small cap, yeah, they could get to large cap, but they're very volatile, and it's a good chance that they may not make it. Things like Forex, things like Bitcoin, anything that's high risk also has a very high reward, right? So the other segment, which is low risk, low reward, that lower left, that's your cash, that's your CD. Right. So when you're looking at all your various financial assets in your stuff, right, you want to look at where it falls into this segment. Everyone wants to be in that northwest quadrant where there's low risk, high reward. There's not a lot of stuff in there, folks. I'm just going to keep it real with you. There aren't very many things that can give you very, very low risk. a very high reward. There are some private equity, creatures that are out there that could play in that space. But we really want to look at the Northwest. I mean, the Northeast and the South. High risk, low reward. That's the place that no one wants to be. No one wants to take on high risk and get low reward. All of this is part of what I call your risk tolerance. So your risk tolerance is what drives typically your asset allocation and what you have in stocks, what you have in bonds. So typically, if you are younger, and one of the slides in here we'll talk about it a little bit now. Typically, if you're younger and you have a longer runway to reach, retirement or whatever that goal may be, right? You can afford to take higher risk, high reward. So you may have more things that do that in your portfolio. You may be okay with the ups and downs and the undulations of the market because in your mind, look, if it goes low and I have a 401k, and if the market's low, I'm buying shares, I'm dollar cost averaging, I'm buying low. And then when it gets high, that's fine too, because I know over time I'm gonna be okay. But if you have 5 years before you need to touch this money, access this money, say for retirement, you're not going to want to take as much risk. And so that's why you probably have things that are maybe lower risk, low reward, like bonds, right? Bonds sort of do like this. They meander up and down a little bit, and they pay a yield and maybe some cash. So risk versus reward is very important when you're looking at your overall investment portfolio. Right. Just be aware that certain things fall into certain parts of this quadrant. Again, just to recap, cash, money markets, they're low risk, but they're low reward, short-term goals. And then the high risk, high reward types of things like international stocks, the day traders, the Forex, the Bitcoin, that kind of stuff will go in the top quadrant. But you just be aware that you don't want to take too much of your money and put it there. It's okay to have a little diversification, have a little smattering little pockets, but you just don't want to go too high. All right, next. All right, the rule of 100. This is a neat just rule of thumb that advisors use or folks use just to give you an idea as to what your retirement portfolio, we could say, should look like. So if you are 25 years old, you take 100, you subtract 25. So 75% of your portfolio should be in stocks and 25% should be in bonds. And as you see there, as we get older, so if you're 50 years old, you take the rule of 100, 100 minus 50. So you should have sort of a balanced portfolio, 50% stocks, 50% bonds. And then as you're getting older, the rule of 100 states you take 100 minus 75 so that you have some exposure to stock. You still need to have that growth in your portfolio because inflation is chipping along at 3 to 5%, but you want your portfolio to be relatively stable and providing you income. There's an old adage in the wealth management business: stocks to get rich, bonds to stay rich. So that's how bonds can help folks once they're getting older is to provide a nice steady income, but also to get them off that wild ride that equities can do. Now, this is just a rule of thumb. I have worked with 75-year-olds that don't want to have that much money in fixed income. They want to have a whole lot more exposure to investments, and they want to, the latest IPO that's coming out, and they play in that space. Conversely, I've met with 25-year-olds that don't want to have as much volatility in their portfolio and don't want to have 75% of their stuff in stocks and want to be balanced. But this is a good place to start when folks ask me typically, well, Mac, how much should I have in stocks? How much should I have in bonds? The rule of 100 is a good rule of thumb that I like to share with folks, and then you can go from there, see what works best for you. All right, what do we got next? All right. The 3 no's, some more Mac nuggets. I tell people there are 3 no's in this world. There are things you know, there are things you know you don't know, and there are things you don't know. And sadly, in the wealth management, financial planning space, for a lot of folks, the things that you don't know are the things that can really be detrimental to your plan if you don't address it or you have someone who is a specialist in that place to be able to just bounce ideas off of and get some insights and thoughts on what happens if. Can't tell you how many times folks will inherit some money from a loved one and they say, oh yeah, okay, well I'll just send me the check, and they don't realize that in doing that, if it's some sort of annuity or some sort of account like this, there's a huge tax penalty. Or if it's a 401k plan or retirement plan, there's a huge tax penalty, and they just didn't know what they didn't know. So, when it comes to financial planning and financial, decisions, there are a lot of things out there that can go wrong. So again, reach out to someone that you know is an advisor or CFP. You can go to letsmakeaplan.org, which is the Certified Financial Planning, the CFP board, and you can put in your zip code, and you can find tons of certified financial planners or advisors in your market that can sit with you and either fee-based, or sometimes they work in different ways or compensate in different ways. But I've seen way too many things go wrong with people when it comes to their financial advice, or when it comes to their financial assets, that I think it's just important for everyone to be aware that there's a lot of stuff that they don't know, and they should look for help. So, next one, please, sir. All right, I think we're coming up to the end. This is these are my two books. So the first one, Motivate Your Money, again, is written for adults. As you see there on the cover, your emotions should be colorful, your finance should be black and white. And then the second book is The 4 Money Bears. That one is written for elementary school children, kids age 5 to 11. I wrote these to just get the word out about financial literacy, to get the word out about financial planning, because again, sadly, it's just not taught in our schools, and in communities of color, it's almost even worse. So these are two resources that I really hope you got some good information about. All these graphics that you saw in this presentation are from the Motivate Your Money book. I go into a lot of deeper references about all the different aspects of that Pentagon, with the 5 different areas. So if you have young kids and you're looking for a really fun, neat way to broach the conversation about money management, that's what the 4 Money Bears was written for. My firm, Finlit Tech, is currently in the process of working with eMoney advisors to launch the app, the 4 Money Bears app. We had a great contest, the FinTech Bullpen contest, that wrapped up in October last month. And so right now we're in the process of building the team to build that app, but we're also going to be providing a lot of financial literacy and financial wellness content, diverse and inclusive financial wellness and literacy content. And we're going to be interviewing a lot of CFPs, a lot of advisors, a lot of folks in the financial services as well as the tax services, in conjunction with their launch of their incentive app, which is a financial wellness app. So I am in a very fortunate and blessed position to have been in this business for 20 plus years, heard a lot of stories, done a lot of planning, but more importantly, I'm just very passionate about educating people when it comes to their money. And eMoney is one of the leaders in that space. And so they saw the passion, they saw what we're trying to build here at Finlit Tech. And so we're going to be partnering in 2021 to bring some really, really neat resources to a lot of people across the country and potentially across the world. So I saw a couple questions come up there. Are there specific questions you should ask when looking for a financial advisor? Yeah, there are. The first one is, what's your process? What's your process when working with your clients? Do we sit down? Do you sit down and do a discovery meeting? Do you provide an actual formal plan? That's one of the questions where a lot of folks will say, no, put that at the back end. I like to put that at the front end, because I'm a process-driven person. And I think if you ask a financial advisor from the jump, so tell me what's your process, that'll kind of have them saying, oh, okay, this person really is serious about this engagement. Another question you may want to ask is, do you have an area of specialty? A CFP could have a background in insurance. They could have started on the investment side. They could have started on the retirement planning side. So you can ask them, hey, do you have a specific area of specialty? Some people really like the investment management side. and don't really mess around with the insurance side, or vice versa. And then a third question you want to ask is, how are you compensated? If I engage you and we do this plan, how are you compensated? Are you fee-based? Are you compensated based upon assets under management? There's no right or wrong to either option. It's just your comfort level as to how you want to engage your financial advisor. And the most important thing is just be transparent, and that they are transparent with how they're running their business. And I think the other question that I saw was, how do we choose stocks to invest for first-time investors? It's a tough one. What I would do is I would start with, say, like a large cap, as I said before. Start with an S&P 500. Start with the Dow Jones. Start with an ETF or a no-load fund or a low-load fund that allows you to invest in the bigger companies. There's going to be volatility, just like every day you turn on the TV and markets up, markets down. But comparatively to, say, mid-cap and small-cap stocks, that's a good place to start. And then if you want to start looking at different things, I have colleagues that do a lot of trading on over the counter. It's called the pink sheets, like penny stocks. Not suggesting you do that, but you can definitely go and you can find some really good deals there and get some really high returns. But I like starting with things like ETFs that are low cost, starting with a large cap, and then if you want to maybe start going into technology, you move into that. If you want to start in the pharmaceuticals, there are actual ETFs that invest in certain segments. There are ETFs that invest in gold. There are ETFs that invest in the automotive industry. So you can do what's called a core satellite approach. I've had clients that have built portfolios like that for them. They have like a sort of core portfolio that's just your large cap stuff, and then you have satellites that have other things around it, depending on different areas that you're interested in. You kind of have to follow some of these companies too if you want to start getting into specific stocks and specific companies. I was a commercial lender for years. So I actually, I'm kind of nerdy like that. Well, I'll read, quarterly financials and annual statements and look and see what the what the ROI are and the ROE are and the deltas year versus year. So I do that, but for someone who's starting off, just start with some big stuff, large cap stuff. Let's see, I see another chat in here. Talk briefly about the concept of generational wealth and how we can make. Okay, so this is a great question. Can you please talk briefly about the concept of generational wealth and how we can make that more of a reality within the Black community? Sure. So I think the first step is education. There's a reason why I made these bears 4 different colors, and there's a reason why I made 2 of them boys and 2 of them girls. It's a nod to diversity and inclusion and the fact that we need more of it. I joke around kind of half-heartedly, but people care what you sound like, people care what you look like, people care where you're from. Money doesn't. Money is the sort of the ultimate democratizer, and the issue that we have in our communities of color and underserved communities is it's not being taught. And so that's why I'm so passionate about that For Money Bears book. Is if our kids, our young kids of color, Black and brown kids, are now aware as to what they can do with their money from an early age, right? That starts a process, right, that can be earth-shattering down the road in our communities, because they have the basic knowledge now that it's not just running out there and buying shoes or buying this or buying that, buying that. But if you look at my book, I talk about investing in stocks, in bonds, in real estate, in precious metals, but just opening a child's mind to the fact that you can invest your money and put in certain things. You can actually purchase shares of the company that makes that thing or that shoe or that backpack or what have you, and just changing the mindset. So I've done quite a few speaking engagements with schools. I've done quite a few speaking engagements for non-for-profit organizations. I'm working with Junior Achievement right now to do some some panel work for underserved communities here in Tampa. So I think it starts with education, and I think starting it early is very helpful. If you're a little further down, further along your course, there's a ton of information and there's a ton of guidance that you can get from a lot of different resources. And the Motivate Your Money platform that we're doing with eMoney is actually built for adults and really talks about financial wellness, and it's going to be educating the average consumer. But the faces that you're going to see in our multimedia deliverables are going to be faces like mine, women of color, women, Hispanic women. So you're going to see a lot of different people that are leading the charge in financial literacy and financial wellness. That is not the typical, industry male, pale, and stale, which it is. So a little long-winded, but that's what we see as the future of financial literacy and how it's impacting from a diversity and inclusion perspective. There was a question about stocks before mine. Can you go back and address that one? The question about stocks. What are the best long-term tools for someone just beginning to actively manage their money? I think we talked about that a little bit. You want to look at brokerage accounts or things along those lines, and look at ETFs as tools. The difference between mutual funds and ETFs. We talked about that. Glad you mentioned need for more education. Sent a couple questions. I signed up. Are there individual stocks to look into now in preparation of the market before rebound the pandemic? A joke I like to tell people all the time: if you see the parade going by, you miss the beginning. So I am not a huge fan. I have not ever been a huge fan of market timing. I would tell my clients all the time, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. So, could you go out there and maybe put a crystal ball out and see, which tech company is doing X or which pharmaceutical company is doing Y? You could. It'll just take a lot of your time, and there are people out there that are sort of paid to do that. They're fund managers and money managers. I look at long-term investing and investing in things like stocks as long-term approaches. Great story. And then we can open it to a couple more questions. I would have folks come in, set up accounts, and then like every month, is the market up? Is the market down? Is the market up? Is the market down? And so I would share the story. I said, hey, tell me something. Have you someone ever come to your home and said, hey, where's the mall? And have you ever responded, get in your car, when you get to the stop sign, make a left and drive 26,400 feet? You've never said that to anyone, right? You say, get in your car and drive 5 miles down the road. So when you're dealing with investing, the frame of reference is years. It's not months, it's not weeks, it's not days, because you're going to see a bunch of this all the time. So investing takes years, and you have to get your mind into that ability that this money that you're investing is money that you don't necessarily need to touch because it's for a long-term goal, which it goes back to that bucketing approach. See something that's popped up. So we've been living in a home for 20 years, 5 more years on mortgage. Should we take money before we be pay it off or continue on the 5-year plan? All right, so the question is, they've been in their home for a while, they have 5 more years. Should they take money out of the 403B to pay it off or continue the 5-year plan, paying off the mortgage to get there? The first question that comes to mind is, what's the interest you're paying on your mortgage versus how much is your money earning in your 403B? The money in that 403B is growing tax deferred. So as long as it stays in there, you never have to pay taxes on it. If your interest rate on the mortgage is relatively low, even if it's high, if you've got 5 years left, if it's in the 5-6 range, you may just want to go to a bank and say, hey, look, I've got 5 more years left in this mortgage. Can we refi this at 2%, 3%, which is what the prevailing rates are right now? So I've never been a fan of yanking retirement money out, especially if there could be potential taxes, to pay off debts, unless the debt is really, really big and the interest rate's really, really big, and you're going to be making like a huge savings for doing that. But the first thing I would do is I would look at what the interest rate you're paying on that mortgage is now, and then if it's north of 4%, go into a bank or a small bank or credit union and looking at a potential refi, which could lower your monthly notes. And in 5 years, that's going to be gone. Once the home is debt free, though, I will say to folks, you may want to look at some sort of home equity line of credit, not another mortgage, but a home equity line of credit, because I've seen so many situations where people have paid their home off and they feel good, they feel great. Some sort of natural disaster happens, some sort of emergency happens, and there's this big glass building that's full of cash and they have no access to. So you may want to look at that as some sort of alternative once the mortgage is paid off, to at least have a spigot or some way to access that equity or that capital in your home. Not saying that you need to take it out, but at least set the vehicle up to be able to access it should you need it for emergency situations. We're at 8:22. Big Brother Bert, do we have any more questions? I have the question. Thank you all so much.
I don't see any more questions at the moment. So right. Let's give one last, kind of going once, going twice for any more questions. And if not, we'll get ready to close it out.
Awesome. For everyone that's on the call, again, thank you so much for the time. We are in very trying times right now. We've got COVID, we've got elections, all kinds of stuff. But this is all, as it comes to investment management over the long term, this is all just white noise, right? Focus on the plan. Focus on what your plans are. Focus on the various tools that you have available to you and access to when putting together your financial plan. And the plan is what should drive you as you're going down the path. Don't worry if the market's up, the market's down, because if it's down right now and you're in something like a 401k and you're putting money in every month or every other week or what have you, that's a good thing, right? Don't worry about all the stuff that's going on out there. Your plan is if your plan changes, right, that's when we need to start changing the various allocations and the tools that you have. So the tools should never drive the plan. The plan should always drive the tools.
I think we have one more question in the chat.
All right, let's see what we got here. Maybe out of scope, but there's some banks you'd recommend. So what I won't recommend a specific bank, but what I can recommend, or what I can put some shape around, are the different types of banking institutions that are out there. So you've got your brick and mortar, your Bank of America, your Wells Fargo, all that fun stuff. Those are your brick and mortar banks. Good for mortgages, good for commercial loans, good for all that fun stuff. And then you have your community banks, smaller banks, which are also very, very good, and a lot of times a lot more accessible. You have credit unions, which are also very neat resources, can also a lot of times give you discounts on rates for your home, for your car. But there are also digital banks that are coming up. Ally, I think American Express has one. So if you are looking for the best rates right now from a banking perspective, like on CDs and cash, look at some of these virtual banks that don't have the expenses of a brick and mortar. So that savings of not having to spend on those big buildings and all those things, they provide their clients in higher interest rates. So depending on what you're looking for, there's more out there than ever before. You can get a loan through an app right now. I think at Rocket Mortgage, a bunch of technology and stuff that's coming up. So yeah, just look around and try to find the best rates, especially when it comes to banking. Just rate shop.
We actually have a great question in the chat.
All right.
Should one pay off debt like a student loan before investing?
So depending on the cost of that debt, yeah. If your debt is, if you're dealing with like credit cards, and it's like 13, 15, 20%, right? The reason why you'd want to focus on paying that off is because it's hard for me to say, hey, no, don't pay off that high interest 15% debt. Let me put your money into this thing that's going to get you 15%. There's nothing realistic like that out there, in the market for me to say, don't do that, do this. If your debt isn't that high interest, then you may want to look at, okay, what can I do to pay this debt off? But then again, siphon is little. There are places you can go online and pay as little as, not pay, but contribute as little as $50 a month to start investing. I mean, Acorns allows you to take, fractional shares and invest as little as that. So the overall question is, or the overall answer is, is it important to pay off debt? Yes. High interest debt, you definitely want to eliminate as quickly as possible. And then once you get that done, you can utilize that cash flow for things like investing.
Excellent. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and move towards closing things out. Mac, I want to thank you. As you mentioned, you instantly said yes when we reached out to you. I want to thank you for being willing to share this information. From the UMBA perspective, of being the vessel for Black alumni activities and things like that, we look at ourselves as a family. So this is important information. And we do know that when I asked the question about generational wealth, we understand that within the Black community, there is a need to get that education. So hopefully everyone understands why we want to do programming like this, why we're doing a series like this. And hopefully whatever phase you are in your financial life, whether you're a veteran, whether you know a lot of this stuff, hopefully you still pick something up. And if you're just getting started and you feel like you're behind the curve, Mac told you some things to let you know it's never too late to get started. So hopefully you'll continue to stick with us throughout the series and keep checking the email and social media for follow-up information. So with that, again, thank you, Mac, and I'm going to hand it off to Kathy.
Thank you so much, Bert. Hey, the journey continues, brother. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, Mac. We really do appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thank you, Bert, for being the moderator. And thank all of you for attending this evening. Once again, this is the first in our series of financial wellness and success events. Please look to our social media and our newsletter for upcoming financial events, which will cover home buying, and we're going to get into the investing in retirement a little bit deeper. But yeah, so we're looking to do some home buying, a home buying event and investing in retirement. So look for those and other UMBA events coming up. I did want to remind everybody that we're also in the midst of our fundraiser for our Student Success Education Scholarship. And you can find information about that on our social media and in our newsletter as well. And I hope everyone has a good evening, and thank you once again for joining us. Take care.